With each breath, imagine the day washing away. Every sound, every thought, every worry carried off in the rain. The air is cool, the light dim and safe. You are indoors now, dry and warm, where the only sound is the soft drumming of rain on the roof. Let the sound draw you inward. Feel your breath settle, your heart quiet, your mind begin to drift. And when you're ready, we'll begin tonight's story.
Welcome back to our bedtime stories. Settle in, breathe deeply, and let the day fall away. Tonight, we return to a place where memory and mystery intertwine. The night is quiet, and somewhere beyond the hush of sleep, another story stirs. Here's a tale of love once lost and love born anew. A tender daydream carried on the wind. The mornings begin before the light, when the world is still blue and breathing. In the half-dark, the clinic yard smells faintly of wet earth and boiled tea. And somewhere beyond the acacias, a hornbill clears its throat like an old teacher. A cat, really the clinic's cat, though Ellie insists it belongs to no one, threads her ankles as she unlocks the treatment room. Dr. Eleanor Kimball, Ellie to everyone in Nambala, clicks on the soft strip of counter lights. Jars gleam, cotton swabs, the tiny amber bottles with dropper caps that always make her feel hopeful. She moves through the rooms the way she always does. Eyes on the floors, the bins, the oxygen gauge, fingertips brushing the cool metal of the instrument tray as if blessing it for the day. Outside, the sky lifts itself from indigo to gray. The cat hops to the window ledge and watches the morning arrive. She likes this hour. It's the hour when the day is still an outline, and she can imagine coloring it any way she wants. Her bungalow sits just behind the clinic, a modest square with a corrugated roof and whitewashed walls that keep the heat at bay. Each evening, the scent of her small garden follows her inside. Basil and lemongrass and the shy sweetness of guavas ripening at their own stubborn pace. When the wind is from the west, she can hear the river like a slow conversation. On the shelf above her desk are field guides, a chipped mug of pens, and a tiny carved rhino the size of a walnut. The gold ring on her finger catches the light when she reaches for a pen. Just a faint glimmer, enough to draw her eyes every time. Sometimes, when she notices it unexpectedly, it feels like a star caught in a spider's web, improbable, delicate, held. She turns it absently as she works, still learning the ring's quiet weight, the promise it carries, and the life waiting just beyond the horizon of her days. She had not expected to say yes this year, not after the winter she lost her mother. How strange it still is to say after, as if a life could be cleanly divided. She flew home in the spring to settle papers, to empty drawers, to stand in unfamiliar living room light and supervise the packing of a house that smelled exactly like her childhood. Grief by the teaspoon, measured and mundane. It was also when she began to wonder, honestly, and without flinching, what home means when you've learned to live far away. Back here in West Africa, the seasons were tipping toward the rains when she returned. Peyton was waiting, much taller than anyone else in the yard, curls sun-bleached into sandy gold, eyes warm and watchful. He checked the generator twice without saying he'd been worried. Later, on the back step where they keep the boots, he asked in that low, unhurried way of his, as if reporting a finding rather than making a request. I don't know where life goes from here, but I'd like to keep walking beside you, if you'll let me. No grand speech, no rehearsed surprise. She said yes before he finished the sentence, laughing and crying at once, and the sky was freckled with swallows, as if the day itself were agreeing. Peyton warms a room by standing in it. He isn't a big talker. He listens, steady as rain, and when he does speak, it's the sort of thing that lands and stays. He's physically affectionate without announcing it. An arm around her shoulders when she's bone-tired. A hand at the small of her back in crowded markets. A forehead pressed lightly to hers when the day has been too much. Sometimes he just watches her talk about vaccines, a difficult case, a plan for the outpost, with that wide, sincere grin that makes her feel understood without a single word. They met behind the clinic 2 years after she arrived, when she'd stopped expecting anything new to begin. Saturday volleyball had become a local habit. Nurses, teachers, aid workers, neighbors, the net sagging in the middle, chalked lines smudged by bare feet. She played for the clinic team, the stubborn goats. He turned up with the neighboring outpost, the wild dogs. In their very first game, she dove for a ball that was clearly his. They collided, sand flying, laughter following the hush. You play like someone with something to prove, he teased, breathless. And you play like someone who's afraid to lose, she shot back, dusting grit off her knees. They shared a bottle of water under the jacaranda afterward, listening to the leaves shake out their shade. Conversation moved the way rivers do, unhurried, finding its own direction. When she asked him for one thing he believes about the world, he thought for a long moment and said, "Most problems are gentler if you are." She tucked the words away without meaning to. Months later, when they began to belong to each other in the easy, ordinary ways, that sentence felt like the truest thing she knew. Now in the morning light, her yes is one more thing she tends. She imagines it like the guavas. It will ripen if she cares for it, if she keeps an eye for the bruise and the beetle. Will I be a good wife? The thought carries like the sun, soft, inevitable. She turns it over as she lines up syringes on the tray. Not perfect. She knows better than that, but steady. Steady might be enough. Work begins to gather itself around her. A driver arrives with the first patients, a goat with a stubborn limp, a shepherd pup whose ears won't stand yet, a crate murmuring with the soft alarm of 2 injured guinea fowl. Ellie crouches, gentle hand under the goat's jaw, speaking low. The owner's worry is written across his face. "We'll look," she says, meaning it fully. Work has always been her anchor. Give herself to the day, receive in return a rightness that feels very close to peace. Between patients, the clinic inhales and exhales. A metal tray clinks. The pump hisses. In the corner, a poster on zoonotic disease flutters in the fan's breath like a half-remembered song. Children giggle at the scale, daring each other to step on it when the staff aren't looking. Ellie washes her hands and studies her reflection in the window. The sunline across her nose, the earnestness she hasn't grown out of. Will I be enough? She gives herself the answer she gives anxious owners, one step at a time. Sometimes, less often now, her thoughts stray to another summer, another river, a door she closed too quickly. The mind is a careful archivist. It pulls one file at a time, and only when asked, She doesn't linger there, not today. At midday, the heat presses down. The staff drift to the strip of shade by the jacaranda, purple blossoms falling like a snowfall. Ellie takes her lunch on the bungalow steps. Rice, a little mango, 2 slices of cucumber that taste like the garden hose smelled when she was a kid. She makes a list in her head for the wedding. Talk to the tailor, ask about the community hall, keep it simple and true. Pockets in the dress large enough for a stethoscope. She wants a ceremony that feels like this place, not like a picture in a magazine. Music you feel in your ribs. Laughter that carries. She's midway through the mango when a truck she doesn't recognize bumps along the clinic track. It's the kind of truck that arrives dusty, no matter how short the journey. The driver hops down, consults a slip of paper, and looks around as if expecting to be corrected by someone invisible. Ellie stands, wipes her fingers on a napkin, and waves. "Dr. Kimball," he calls, wary of getting it wrong. "Ellie is fine," she says, stepping forward, the cat gliding in her wake like a small gray river. He tilts his head toward the cab and returns with a small, tightly taped parcel. Not heavy, not light. The sort of weight that makes you think of books. There are stamps in the corner, American ones, faded. Her mother's name in the sender line, and below it, in a hand she recognizes at once, her own, Doc Eleanor Kimball, CO Veterinary Clinic, Nambala, West Africa. The driver explains there was a delay and then another, papers misfiled in a place where papers often are, and a cousin of a cousin who finally carried it to the district office. He smiles apologetically, as if the journey of small boxes is something anyone can control. She signs, thanks him, tucks a cold bottle of water into his hand for the return trip. Back on the bungalow steps, she turns the parcel over. Someone, her mother, she thinks, because who else would have been this careful, has strengthened the corners with extra tape and written fragile in block letters across the front of the box. Ellie's heart does its small, inexplicable stutter. The last of her mother's things, then. A lagging echo from a life already catalogued and swept. She feels unexpectedly tender towards the box for the effort it took to reach her. Sorting bins, conveyor belts, trucks, hands that lifted and set it down a dozen times. She doesn't open it immediately. The day will not wait if she lets it. There is still the goat to recheck and the swallow to splint before sunset. But the box sits in the corner of her vision, quiet as a guest who doesn't want to intrude and yet is very much present. All afternoon, the clinic continues its breathing. Patients in and out. Questions translated into plans. Ellie works with her usual steadiness, though every so often her gaze drifts to the clock, and her thumb finds her ring. Marriage, she thinks, is a promise you make every day, not just once in front of people you love. She wonders what promises her mother hoped she would make, and which ones she feared. By the time the last patient leaves, the light has gone honey-colored and long. The staff sweep floors with the rhythm of people who have swept 1,000 floors. Someone turns the kettle on again. Peyton crosses the yard with his easy stride and sets a jar of wildflowers on her desk without ceremony. For the exam room, he says, the grin soft and sincere. He presses a kiss to her hairline, lingers a heartbeat, and is gone, boots squeaking, shoulders loose, as if the whole day has forgiven him. In the bungalow, she washes her hands a final time, turns her ring with her thumb, and sits at the desk. The cat jumps lightly to the chair and curls into something that looks like a question mark. Ellie slits the tape. Under the first layer, tissue paper, A neat stack of photographs, her mother's brooch, the edge of a small leather notebook. The smell that rises is complicated. Paper, dust, and the faint echo of her mother's perfume, polite and floral, always reminding Ellie of first days of school. Her mouth goes unexpectedly dry. She lifts the notebook, then the envelope beneath it. The envelope is yellowed at the edges, the flap sealed but brittle. Her name on the front, in the hand she knows as well as her own. Another name in the return corner, one she hasn't said aloud in years. Jackson Reed. She sits very still. Outside, somewhere near the river, a nightjar begins its lonely, lovely call. Ellie draws a breath, steadying herself without quite knowing why, and slides a finger under the seal. For a long moment, there is no clinic, no ring, no jacaranda snow, only a young woman in a small American town, a summer evening gone wrong, and a letter that should have found her long ago. The paper trembles in her hands. She smooths the crease, and the scent of dust and lavender rises like a ghost. The first words catch the light. Dear Ellie, I've replayed tonight in my mind again and again, and I still can't believe how quickly everything fell apart. She reads, and the room begins to tilt backward through time. The world then smelled of rain on hot pavement and honeysuckle over the porch rail. Ellie was 22, newly accepted to the veterinary program that would take her halfway across the world. Every evening that summer, she and Jackson Reed walked the river trail until fireflies blinked between the reeds. He carried her shoes when she wanted to feel the mud between her toes. They talked about everything except the one thing waiting unsaid between them. That night had been meant for celebration. Jackson had reserved a table at the small cafe by the water, the one with the chipped blue shutters and the lemon trees in barrels. She arrived early, nerves fizzing, and through the window she saw him laughing with a dark-haired girl she didn't recognize. The girl leaned close, touching his arm, eyes bright. Something in Ellie's chest folded shut. She didn't stay to hear the laughter's shape. She turned away, the bell above the door jingling softly as she fled back into the humid evening. When Jackson caught up to her at her mother's porch an hour later, she was already packed for the next morning's flight. "Ellie, wait," he said. "I saw enough," she answered, keeping her voice flat, her eyes fixed on the latch. "It's not what you think. I don't have time for explanations." He reached for her hand, but she drew back, the hurt quicker than reason. His next words tumbled over each other, something about family, about tomorrow, about her leaving, but she was already climbing the stairs. The porch light flicked off as her mother opened the door behind her, as if even the house wanted the conversation to end. Jackson's letter. "The woman you saw with me wasn't someone else. That was Caroline, my stepsister. She and my father came into town because they thought there would be something to celebrate. They believed I was going to ask you to marry me. Caroline and I met early so I could tell her the plan, to surprise you tonight, to tell you I'd found a position near your school, that I wanted to follow you overseas. I even asked her to bring the ring I left with her for safekeeping. When you saw us, I thought you'd come inside and I could introduce you, but you walked away before I could move. I ran after you, but you were gone. Ellie, there's never been anyone else. I love you. I'll be waiting by the river on Friday like we said. If you come, I'll be there. If not, I'll still be there for a while, just in case. Always. Jackson." Her mother found the letter 2 mornings later in the mailbox, its paper still smelling faintly of rain. She read it standing by the sink, coffee cooling beside her hand. Through the window, she could see Ellie's suitcase in the back of the taxi, the driver closing the trunk. Her daughter's face was pale but determined, already half a world away in her heart. The letter trembled. Love, marriage, Africa. It was all too much too soon. She imagined Ellie staying, giving up the chance she herself had never taken, and something inside her refused to let that happen. She folded the page slowly, carefully, as though gentleness could make it less of a sin. The drawer beside the telephone opened with a sigh. The letter slipped in, hidden beneath old birthday cards and insurance forms. "You'll thank me one day," she whispered, though her voice didn't sound like her own. "You were meant for more." When the taxi pulled away, she stood at the window a long time, the folded letter pressing against her ribs like a second heartbeat. She stood at the window a long time, the folded letter pressing against her ribs like a second heartbeat. Now, years later, in the dim bungalow in Nambala, Ellie's eyes moved down the page to that final signature, Jackson. The ink has faded to brown, but the emotion is alive and trembling. Outside, the night insects start their chorus. The jungle seems to draw nearer, listening. Ellie sets the letter down, her pulse thrumming. The air feels both full and empty. She whispers to no one, "He was waiting, and I never came." The cat stirs, stretches, and settles again. The river keeps on talking in the dark. Ellie presses her palms to the paper once more, then folds it gently back along its creases, as if the act might rewrite the years between. Night gathers without hurry. The bungalow holds its breath, the kind of quiet that arrives after a revelation and doesn't quite know where to sit. Ellie rests the letter on the desk, as if it were something alive, the folds soft from years of waiting. The lamp hums faintly. Outside, the river works at its edges, unbothered by human time. She makes tea she doesn't drink. The mug warms her palms, then cools. She tries to write a few lines in her journal, but the pencil lingers above the page, like a small bird unwilling to land. The cat climbs into the curve of her lap and purrs so steadily it feels like an instruction. Breathe, then breathe again. He was waiting, and I never came. The sentence moves through her like a tide, receding and returning. It is not the old sharp ache. This one is wider, slower, threaded with humility. She thinks of her younger self in Maple River, chin lifted, certainly like armor, the porch light switching off behind her as if the house, too, had decided it was better not to talk. She has such fondness for that girl and such impatience with her, all in the same breath. Across the desk, the ring glints where the lamp finds it. She turns it with her thumb, one slow circle, then another. Will I be a good wife? The question has been a quiet companion for weeks. Tonight it returns, wearing a different coat. Am I brave enough to love the life I chose? She thinks of Peyton's steady hands and calm grin, the way he gives space without drifting. Anchorage disguised as absence. She loves him. That fact is as ordinary and enormous as air. The tea cools completely. She sips it anyway and grimaces, then laughs softly at herself. The sound is small, but it breaks the room's spell. When sleep comes, it brings water. She dreams of 2 rivers running side by side, the brown, slow current of home, the quick green one here. Where they braid together, the surface shines like silk, and she can't tell which reflection is hers. Morning returns like forgiveness. The clinic wakes in its usual order. The rattle of buckets, a wheelbarrow creaking, laughter carrying easily because laughter always does. Ellie moves through the rooms with practiced hands. Thermometer, stethoscope, bandage, quiet voice. Work is kinder today. It doesn't ask for answers, only attention. A farmer arrives with a calf whose knees tremble like reeds in wind. Ellie checks the gums, the eyes, the nuzzle that seeks her wrist for comfort. Salt lick, she tells the owner gently, and a little patience. He nods as if she has prescribed a blessing. Later, she splints a swallow's wing with a sliver of cardboard and the tender gravity of someone who understands that hope should be light but not careless. Between patients, she stands in the doorway and watches the jacaranda shed its purple weather. The petals collect in the dust, like an argument she has decided not to continue. A volunteer swats half-heartedly at a fly. The cat sprawls in a sling of sunlight, shameless and satisfied. The day exhales. Peyton arrives close to noon, shoulders damp, shirt untucked, in a way that would have made her mother cluck her tongue and smile anyways. He set a crate of vaccines by the counter and nudges it into place with his boot, then glances up. One look, just one, and he crosses the room, palms open, as if to show he's carrying nothing she has to lift. "You're far away," he says. Not a question. "Only a little," she answers. She tries for a grin and almost makes it. "How are the wild dogs this week?" "Terrifying as ever." The corner of his mouth lifts. "I keep telling them we need new jerseys." He doesn't press. He never does. He leans his hip against the counter and waits with that easy patience that once tricked her into talking about everything. Today she doesn't. She rests her shoulder against him and borrows his warmth in silence, feeling him breathe, counting the beats until her own breath remembers how. When he does speak, it's not about her face or her mood or the way her laugh moved sideways. "I'm going to check that back fence after lunch," he says. "The goats have discovered a religion that involves escape." It's a small kindness, the offer of ordinary plans. She nods and finds she's grateful for the rope of routine, tossed without fuss across the small river inside her. After he leaves, she opens the ledger and pretends to tally feed. Really, she's listing the things her mother kept: photographs, ribbons, a brooch, this letter with its old air and earnest ink. She tries to wear the memory from the inside to see what her mother saw the day she placed the envelope beneath the dishcloths. A daughter balancing on the edge of a life with one foot already lifted. A boy holding a ring that could anchor or rescue or both. The ache of unlived roads. People talk about forks as if choices come two at a time. It has always seemed to Ellie that choices come like rain, thin at first, then sudden, then everywhere. In the late afternoon, a wind rises that smells like iron and wet green. Ellie's hair lifts at the temples. The clinic roof ticks as clouds unroll from the hills. That weathered, river-colored feeling returns, edged with longing, edged with love, this time without judgment attached to either. She gathers the last of the bandages, sweeps the sand from the doorway, stacks the metal trays with their soft, clean clatter. She means to walk straight home, but her feet take the long way, the path that curves towards the river, and back along the gardens where beans climb twine, and children chase each other with the cooperative malice of joy. By the old fig she stops and presses her palm to the trunk, feeling the faint text of bark under skin. What would my life have been, she wonders, not accusingly, not even sadly, just with the ordinary curiosity of a person reading a map, if I had opened that letter on the day it arrived. She tries to hold both truths at once, that she loves her life, and that another good life might have been waiting too. The mind wants to rank them. The heart doesn't care to. On the river path, she sits for a while on the low wall and watches a boy teach his younger sister how to float. Arms wide, eyes on the sky, the body surrendered to the idea that water will hold it. The lesson seems to take a very long time and then to happen all at once. The girl's face shifts from concentration to astonishment to ease, and Ellie feels something in herself mirror the sequence, though she couldn't say what. Dusk leans in. The jacaranda throws longer shadows. Bats begin the scribble of their evening handwriting. She rises and walks home. Peyton is mending the back door latch with the practiced stubbornness of someone who believes most problems will reveal their solution if watched kindly. He glances up, the question in his eyes again, but softer now, wrapped in the willingness to wait. She steps beside him and holds the tiny screw while he threads it. Their hands knock gently together. Neither apologizes. When he's finished, he opens and closes the door twice, pleased by the cooperation of wood and metal, then wipes his palms on his shorts. "Come see," he says, guiding her by the wrist to the sink. He turns the handle. The tap, which has been coughing like an old man for weeks, runs smooth and obliging. There's a little bow in his laugh, as if he's thanking the universe for agreeing to this small thing. No more symphonies at 2 a.m. Ellie leans against the counter and watches him watch the water. She could tell him everything right now. The cafe window, the porch, the letter's steady voice. She could watch him line up the facts the way he lines up screws and find the place where forgiveness fits. She almost does. Instead, she reaches for his shirt and tugs him nearer by the hem, rests her forehead against his sternum, and lets his arms find their natural circle around her. They stand like that long enough for the light to slide across the floorboards and climb the far wall, a slow-moving river of gold. "I'll be all right," she says finally, not because she is or isn't, but because the sentence feels like a step onto solid ground. "I know," he answers, "and until you are, I'll be here." There is no theater in it. He just is. After dinner, rice, beans, a silly argument about whether guavas are better chilled or warmed from the tree. She sits at her desk again. The letter lies where she left it, rectangle of history on a field of wood. She slips it back into its envelope and sets it beside the little leather notebook from the box. She doesn't put either away. Some things are allowed to be visible while they decide what they mean. Before bed, she writes 3 sentences in her journal. There are many versions of a life. I chose this one, and it has chosen me back. I still need to talk to my mother, and I don't know how. The last line makes her throat ache in a helpful way, the way a stretch aches after the first long walk of the season. She closes the book and sets it atop the envelope, a small cairn marking where she is. Night gathers fully. The clinic yard goes quiet, except for the occasional metal sigh, the wind nosing the leaves, the steady music of the river. In that dark, unhurried hour, between wakefulness and sleep, she thinks of an old woman she sees sometimes at the market, the one who sits near the baskets and tells the little ones to keep their pennies flat so they don't run away. Ellie decides she'll go tomorrow and bring her a thermos of tea. She doesn't know why this feels important, only that it does. A cat relocates to the foot of the bed. Peyton turns once, murmurs something kinder than words, and goes still again. Ellie lies awake a little longer, listening to the room be a room, letting time do what time is best at when invited. Settle. She is not finished hurting. She's not finished loving. She is, for now, held gently between the two. And the story, for tonight, refuses to hurry. That night, rain begins as a whisper on the roof, slow and even, as if someone were testing the sound before letting it play in earnest. Ellie lies awake, her eyes tracing the faint seam of moonlight that sneaks through the shutters. On the nightstand, the letter rests beneath her journal, the paper's edges curled slightly from the damp air. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and uncertain. It doesn't take her back to Jackson or the river. It carries her somewhere older, somewhere she's never been, but has somehow always known. Her mother is young again, barely 20, hair pinned too neatly for the heat of the afternoon. She sits at a narrow desk beside an open window in a small town in 1963. Outside, cicadas hum like 1,000 clocks. Inside, the girl who will one day be Ellie's mother sketches rooftops from memory, the curve of an imagined Paris skyline, the tilt of a cafe chair she's never seen. On the wall hangs a calendar from a local grocer. The month is June. In the square for the 17th, she's written in pencil, passport appointment. The radio murmurs in the background, Bobby Darin's Beyond the Sea. The sound fills the room with impossible promise. Her father calls from the hallway, "Dinner's ready, and turn that racket down, would you?" She sighs, closes the sketchbook, and smooths the page as though calming an animal. At the table, her parents talk about the neighbor's new car, about the rising price of flour, about practical things that make the world safe and small. When she mentions Paris, her father doesn't even look up. A good husband is a better adventure, he says, half smiling, half warning. Her mother, Ellie's grandmother, adds gently, "You'll see the world in other ways, darling. There's beauty right here if you stop chasing." The young woman smiles, because that's what daughters do when love comes with walls. That night, she tucks her sketchbook under the bed and whispers to the dark, "Someday." Years pass in quick brush strokes. A wedding, a baby, Ellie, born in late autumn, when the maples outside burn themselves red. The sketchbook gathers dust. The passport form yellows on a bookshelf. Her husband is kind, reliable, the sort who notices when the porch light burns out, but not when she goes quiet. When Ellie is 5, she catches her mother painting again, little watercolors of imagined streets, people in long coats and berets. "Where is that?" Ellie asks. "Paris," her mother says, "but I've never been." "Then how do you know what it looks like?" Her mother smiles faintly. "Sometimes you just do." Ellie's father dies when Ellie is 16. The house grows still in a way that no amount of visitors can fill. One evening, her mother sorts through a box of old things, the passport form, the sketchbook, a travel brochure with creases like folded wings. For a moment, she holds them all together, as if the weight might still equal a possibility. But it doesn't. She closes the box and slides it back into the closet. Then she looks out the window at Ellie, studying under the porch light, head bent, pages glowing, and she feels both grief and relief. She'll go where I couldn't, she thinks. She'll have the courage I mistook for recklessness. The rain outside her dream deepens. In the dream itself, it begins to fall on a real day, the day the letter arrived from Jackson Reed. Ellie's mother stands by the sink with the envelope in her hand. She's older now, softer around the eyes, the artist's fire buried under the daily rituals of caring and keeping. She recognized the earnest handwriting, the boy's name she's heard Ellie whisper in sleep. She reads the letter again, then again. Her gaze drifts to the shelf above the sink, where a watercolor of Paris leans against the wall, unfinished. The blank sky, waiting. She could call Ellie downstairs. She could hand her the letter, let her heart decide. But she imagines it too clearly. Her daughter staying, marrying young, trading every horizon for one porch. The same small town, the same steady kind of love, the same safe cage she herself has outgrown but never escaped. Her hand trembles as she folds the letter along its soft seam. She slips it into the drawer beside the phone and rests her palm over it. "Forgive me," she whispers, not to Jackson, not to Ellie, maybe not even to herself. Thunder mutters softly in the distance. Ellie stirs in her sleep. When she wakes, the room smells of rain and guava leaves. Her face is damp, though she isn't sure if it's from the humidity or tears. The letter still lies on the desk, exactly where she left it. She touches it gently, now understanding the shape of her mother's silence. Not cruelty, but fear disguised as love. Outside, the jungle has washed itself clean. The storm has rinsed the sky clean. Morning sunlight filters through the clinic's wide eaves, pale and forgiving. The air smells of wet bark and the sharp green scent of new beginnings. Ellie feeds the cat, checks the drip line for the recovery cages, and lingers a moment by the open door, where the jacaranda's petals have glued themselves to the earth like small purple prayers. There's work to do, there always is, but the world feels softer today. The letter still sits beneath her journal, though its weight has changed. It no longer presses, it waits. After lunch, Peyton drives into the village to collect supplies. Ellie decides to walk the rest of the way herself, the path winding through banana groves and small gardens bright with peppers and marigolds. She carries a thermos of sweet tea, the handle warm against her palm. She's thinking of her mother, how she must have watched from that old kitchen window, loving her fiercely and wrongly at the same time. The road hums with life, cicadas, children, the steady rhythm of women washing clothes under stones near the river. When she reaches the market square, the familiar sounds fold round her like a blanket. Laughter, bargaining, the clink of coins and cups. Near the shade of a neem tree sits the woman she thought of last night, the elder with silver hair braided neatly, her basket filled with carved spoons and little amulets woven from reeds. She is one of those faces that carries time the way good wood carries polish, gently, beautifully. Ellie kneels beside her, greeting her in the local dialect. The woman smiles, her eyes the color of worn amber. "I brought you tea," Ellie says, setting the thermos between them. The woman unscrews the lid, inhales the steam, and nods. "You have a kind heart, Doctor," she says. Kindness always circles back, like birds after rain. They sit in companionable quiet for a while, watching the square breathe. Then, as if she's been waiting for someone to ask without asking, the old woman begins to speak. "I was engaged once," she says simply. "A long time ago. He was a good man, but I was afraid. My father said I should stay, care for him when he grew old. He said love could wait, but duty cannot." She sips the tea, eyes on some far corner of the past. "So I stayed. And then the years went faster than I expected. My father died, then my mother. The man I loved married someone else. Now at night, I still dream of him sometimes. We're walking along the coast, and I can never remember what it was we were talking about, only that I was happy." Her voice is neither bitter nor sad, just quiet, like a hymn spoken too often to hold surprise. Ellie listens without interrupting. The sound of the market fades, replaced by the hum of something older and deeper. The echo of all the women who were told to wait, or stay, or be sensible. The woman glances up, catching Ellie's expression, and gives a small, knowing smile. You have that look, the look of someone who is learning the same lesson all over again. What lesson is that? Ellie asks softly. That sometimes love must go on without answers. It's not for explaining. It is for living. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The breeze stirs, and the scent of roasted maize drifts from a nearby stall. Children run past, scattering laughter like seeds. Ellie slowly nods. You're right, she says, though what she means is, thank you. The woman pat her hand. Go home to the one who waits for you, she says. That's where your story wants to be. By the time Ellie returns to the clinic, the sky is turning the soft color of apricots. Peyton is outside, mending the porch railing with a strip of wire. He looks up, sees her coming, and grins that quiet grin that always feels like a welcome instead of a greeting. You were gone a while, he says. I met someone, she answers, an extraordinary someone. He tilts his head. Human or animal? Both, I think, she laughs, the sound lighter than it has been in days. They eat together on the steps, a bowl of stew shared between them, spoons tapping in rhythm. The air hums with crickets. A lantern throws gentle halos of gold against the walls. When the meal is done, Peyton reaches into his pocket and draws out a small wooden bead strung on twine. The carpenter's boy carved this, he says. Said it was for good luck. I thought maybe we could hang it above the bed. Start with something simple. Ellie turns it in her fingers. The bead is rough but warm, like a heart that's been through weather. It's perfect, she says. She means the bead, but also him, and also in this moment. Later, when he's fallen asleep beside her, she slips from bed and goes to her desk. The letter still waits, a folded ghost of what might have been. She unfolds it one last time, not to reread, but to write something across the bottom in her own hand. You were loved. We both were. But life called me forward, and I answered. Thank you for waiting as long as you did. She folds it again, presses her lip to the seal, and slides it into her mother's notebook. Some stories don't need returning. They just need resting. The next morning she rises before dawn. The world is still cool and blue. She walks to the river, barefoot, feeling the damp earth give way beneath her feet. The water moves slowly, carrying fragments of leaf and light. Ellie kneels, opens her palm, and lets one of the guava blossoms from her garden drift downstream. For you, she murmurs, to Jackson, to her mother, to the younger self who didn't know how to stay or go. The blossom floats, caught for a moment in an eddy, then continues on, as all things must. She stands there a long while, listening to the river's patient conversation. Then she turns toward home, where Peyton's laughter is already echoing through the yard, and the clinic cat is meowing for breakfast. As she walks back, she feels the morning gather round her like a promise, not the promise of what could have been, but what is, alive and luminous, waiting to be lived. Love does not keep time the way clocks do. It waits in letters, in photographs, in the quiet understanding that sometimes we must lose something to learn how to keep what remains. For Ellie, love became a circle, one that began in misunderstanding, bent through silence, and found its way back through forgiveness. Her mother's dreams had crossed oceans through her, and her own heart had finally learned what the older woman at the market already knew. that life's worth is not measured by the roads we didn't take, but by the courage it takes to keep walking the one we chose. And so when the last light of evening touched the clinic roof and the guava trees sighed in the wind, Ellie whispered a simple prayer, not for more time, not for another chance, but for peace with a story already written. Somewhere in the distance, the river answered, softly, like applause. Thank you for joining me for tonight's tale. Sleep well and dream gently. And if you like this tale, please subscribe.